You don't have any 14-year-old child brides in your closet, do you?
No.
All right.
Not that have come to light yet.
No, I have an unhealthy addiction to the card game Yu-Gi-Oh. That's my dark secret.
Yes, that is his dark magic secret.
Okay, it might be dark, but it's definitely not a secret. You're not.
Yeah, you're not. It's
You're not very secretive about it.
Not when you post pictures of Yugi all the time, your little puppy.
I did name him after that too, yeah.
Okay, so thank you guys for joining us in this video. I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about love bombing. And I'm really especially excited to talk about this because I realize that there's a lot of ambiguity in the term, because it's like, oh, friend, doing something nice and friendly can be love bombing, or it can be friendly depending on the circumstances. So we're specifically going to be talking about love bombing in conjunction with, like high demand religions, cults, things like that. But before we get into it and kind of discuss this, I'm really wanting to start with the importance of love, psychologically speaking. So I've got this awesome video to show you guys, and hopefully my computer is going to cooperate.
Webster's Dictionary defines love as...
Thank you, Jared.
We need to start this out talk style.
Yes.
Okay, are you hearing that, Jonathan?
Hit play. No audio on that one.
Oh, shit. Well,
that's because I think it's because you're sharing like the screen or the window. Yeah. If you go back in and share the tab and then hit.
Yeah, let's try that instead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Share screen. Chrome tab. Share audio. Okay.
Wire mother.
You hearing it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. A little bit of background about this really quick. Harry Harlow is this guy in the 50s and 60s. He did a bunch of very inhumane studies on monkeys that we learned a lot from. And so in this study, they were specifically looking to understand why a baby monkey has love for its mother. And they had a hypothesis that was like, I think that it's because the mother feeds the infant that it starts to have that bond with the mother. So they came up with an interesting idea. They decided to take these baby monkeys away from their mothers, which was, awful, but they took them away and they put in the cage with the baby. They called it two different like fake mothers. And one was this wire one that provided food, and another was this really soft and warm one that was supposed to provide comfort. And they were wondering how the monkey would respond. So we're going to watch this little clip.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother. Now here are 106's two mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch. He's going to the wire mother. He's got to eat to live. Oh, he's going back. He's back on the cloth mother, and he'll stay on the cloth mother. Actually, this baby spends 17 to 18 hours a day on the cloth mother, and less than 1 hour a day on the wire mother. We had predicted that the variable of contact comfort would be a variable of measurable importance, but we were unprepared to find that it completely overwhelmed and overshadowed all other variables, including those of nursing. Frankly, Doc.
Okay, I think that's what we're going to show of that. Oh, there we are. There we're back. That video very effectively demonstrates how important comfort and love is psychologically for a monkey. And we are similar enough to monkeys that we can assume that applies to us. And I think what is important to illustrate about this is that when we understand why love is so important to us, then we understand, first of all, why love bombing is so effective, because it's extremely effective in many scenarios. And two, then we understand also why it's so wrong, because it's taking advantage of this innate desire in us for love and trying to use that to get us to behave in a certain way. Thoughts?
The way I look at this sort of thing is when you see something like this that we all have an innate psychological need for, that when we look at groups like a high demand religion or even a family group or a friend group, the social connections, the acceptance, the camaraderie that we get there fills kind of that need for acceptance, for love, for that relationship. And that need that we all have, that's manifest kind of in its raw form by this monkey that prefers the comfort of the soft mother with the smiling face over the metal cage that happens to have food associated with it. Like, that need that we have for that degree of comfort is a vulnerability. And so when I start to look at these things as vulnerabilities, then you start to realize that the reason that you find what we're going to describe as love bombing in the Moonies, in Heaven's Gate, in almost every group that ended up, overwhelming somebody with an undue influence and high demand paradigm, it's exploiting vulnerabilities. And this is one of the most fundamental and powerful vulnerabilities that exists out there. So it's important to really understand that, because if you do leave one high demand group and go out looking for other social connections, you kind of don't want to fall into the same trap. And there are a bunch of other high demand groups that prey upon people who are leaving one faith paradigm because they recognize that's somebody in a vulnerable, destabilized position.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess one of the reasons this intrigues me is because I feel like love bombing is second only to gaslighting in the terms most misattributed by ex-Mormons. Because every time I talk about, I like being surrounded by Mormons. I don't really want to be one, but I like being surrounded by them. They're good neighbors. All of our neighbors are Mormon, and like the worst that happens is they bring over cookies and stuff like that. And I understand that it can be misused, but I don't think the ones around me misuse it. But anytime I bring that up in most ex-Mormon circles online, especially on the ex-Mormon subreddit, it's always that's just classic love bombing. Like, okay, but I guess we got to sort of get to the difference, and I guess that's what this video is about, the difference between just being nice and love bombing. Because I don't know, it feels kind of like I've got two ideas on what I think might make the difference. I don't know if we want to go into that now, or if you had more you wanted to get
No,
into
let's get to some. I'm excited to get to that, but yeah, not yet.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the definition of love bombing. Okay, here I am trying to figure out links here. Actually, I'll just read a little bit of this, and then I've got a video. Okay, love bombing is the practice of showing a person excessive affection and attention, a way of manipulating them in a relationship. The term is most commonly used in a negative way. Love bombing typically takes place in the form of showering a person with a combination of seemingly genuine expressions of love or attention, such as excessive praise, gifts, grand gestures. In love bombing, this behavior goes beyond the heightened level of attention that can be common at the beginning of a relationship. Love bombing is, let's see, was there anything else of that? Yeah, no, I think that's okay. So the idea, the definitions from what I've read and looked at recently and doing more research about this, when specifically talking about a high demand religion group, because there's kind of two different definitions with love bombing, as far as like it can be in a romantic relationship or in like a family relationship, like any kind of abusive relationship, right? And it could, like if you have a family member that's a narcissist, they may do something mean and then they love bomb you to try to get, forgiveness and keep you kind of attached to their love. And then there's that definition we use with high demand religions, and it's more like a group effort, is my understanding. It's a group effort of like giving you a lot of love and affection and attention to try to get you to either become part of the group or to stay part of the group, etc. In doing some research about where the term came from, we didn't end up finding exactly like where it started, but it seems like the term first showed up in the 70s, the 1970s. And but I think in large it came more to be used more after Stephen Hassen, who is a cult expert, after he left the Moonies, which was the Unification Church. That was like another term for it. Because that group was a very coercive group, and they would implement this technique, this love bombing, very effectively. So I'm going to read a little bit about love bombing with the Unification Church. I'll link this article below later, but this article is talking specifically about like where the term love bombing came from. Oh, let me pull it up actually so we can read it together. Share screen. Chrome tab. Okay. All right. According to Ronald N. Loomis, a cult awareness educator, the term love bombing originated with the Unification Church, and he said that love bombing was a technique that the church used in their recruitment on college campuses. So these are people from the Unification Church going to college campuses and trying to find people that are potentially vulnerable to joining the cult. So here's this quote: "A recruiter approaching the student and doing everything that the recruiter can to make the student feel special and unique. They're quickly trying to convey the message that I am your new best friend, and they will fake mutual interests in order to give them the impression that they may share things in common. And this process is done through typically several visits without it ever being identified that there's an agenda. And in fact, that person is a recruiter and that they're representing a group and that their real purpose is to get that student into the group. They usually try to find a student who shows outward signs of being vulnerable, of being alone, or maybe looking sad." And it goes on a little bit further down here to talk about how the group was trained its members to stand outside the doors of the counseling center and study the faces of the students that were leaving, who are probably coming from a counseling appointment. And if they're crying, if they're avoiding eye contact, if they're looking down and sad, then you walk alongside that person and you strike up a conversation about the weather, what's going on, check out the books they're carrying, and quickly pretend that you're also taking the same class or that you already took it. Do anything to make a connection, because that person is going to respond to you more typically than a student who you might find sitting with 6 other people in the student union snack bar laughing and having a good time.
It's so diabolical that they're specifically targeting people who are vulnerable and destabilized, and then giving them the very thing that they need, but it's done through the means of a form of subterfuge or manipulation because there's an ulterior motive, and that's just, it's kind of like a double deep cut.
And on the flip side of it too, imagine being like one of those, Unification Church members. You might be telling yourself, me going and finding this sad person and like bringing them into the group is like the best thing that's going to ever happen to them. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting because I think oftentimes when we think of love bombing, we get this like malicious intent in our mind of like, they're doing it maliciously. But I think that they're so indoctrinated that it's, at least in my mind, I feel like I have a hard time not viewing it maliciously, but they're so indoctrinated that what they're thinking is like, I'm doing such a great thing by finding all these sad people and making them happy. But it's so important for us to understand the outside, how unhealthy that is, and how that is specifically preying on your need for love and connection and support.
Well, it's an ends justifies the means doctrine. You know, that would be. I guess that's your argument for why it wouldn't be malicious. I guess is because they think that they're doing. You know, okay, yeah, I'm lying to this person, but like I'm doing it so that he finds the truth,
so he can be saved.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's beyond finding the truth. If you're like Scientologists or Mormons, then what you believe that you're doing is you're helping them achieve a state of a degree of happiness and fulfillment that they have no chance of getting outside the group. So you are bringing them, because you believe you're at that point yourself where you believe you are bringing them to a higher state of happiness because you yourself have bought into that idea.
Exactly.
It's like listening to Tom Cruise talk about how Scientologists are like so amazing and they're going to save the world and they're the only ones that can do that group. Like if he believes that, then and if he was involved in this type of thing, he would be trying to get people to get. And so from his perspective, you could say he's doing something that is charitable. But
it's so interesting because it starts to turn everyone into the organization as like a victim instead of like a what's the opposite of a victim? A persecutor or whatever, Victor. You know? And it's very it's really interesting because then it's like, at what point does this like destabilize? Like you say, like it's the prophet's fault, or is it, you know, the brethren's fault, or is it like, and you work your way down and you're like, I don't know. Like I don't know. It's very interesting. Jared's got a little clip about the Moonies that we'll play really quick because it kind of is in conjunction with this. So if you don't know about the Moonies, this will kind of explain a little bit about them. Sure. There it is.
The Moon cult, or Moonies, refers to the Unification Church, founded in the 60s by Sun Myung Moon. The group was known for its mass weddings and staunch anti-communist beliefs.
The worldview of a member of the Moonies was very us versus them. We are the chosen, we are the elite. We're gonna take over the world. Only Korean will be spoken. All other religions will be abolished.
When and why did you join?
So I was 19, I was gonna graduate. I was gonna be a poetry writer, but my girlfriend dumped me and I was lonely. 3 women flirted with me. And I remember asking at one point, are you part of some religious group? And they said, oh no, not at all. And they invited me over for dinner and they're like, hey, we're going away for the weekend. It's gonna be so cool, you need to come. And I was very naive and trusting.
Okay, I think that's all I'm gonna play of that. A couple of things to point out there is that
it's like that King of the Hill part. You're like, are you guys with the cult? No, we're just a group of people that love each other. Yep, this is it.
I should have had that clip. So a couple of things to note there that he brought up that we kind of explained in the article too is that one, they lied to him. They intentionally lied to him, which makes that they weren't part of the group. And makes me think they were probably flirting with him as a lie as well, right? But then also, there's another thing I was going to say about it, and I can't remember. So,
well, it's funny because they may not have necessarily been lying, because I think the Moonies as well as Scientology have this thing that they do where they set up ancillary organizations that they claim are for purposes that are not religious. So it may be some sort of charitable work or something that's not specifically a church activity, but it is a feeder organization that's closely tied to the church, that's completely managed by the church. But then if they could say we're operating through this particular organization, then they can say, well, no, we're not affiliated with the church. That's not why we're contacting you. We're trying to get you to go on this weekend retreat with this other organization. They just don't reveal that it's related somehow to the church organization.
I feel like they gotta know. They gotta know inside that like what we're doing is trying to convince the end game of this is to get this guy to join the religion. And I think maybe because a lot of the things we've been reading about the Moonies is that they want you to employ deception.
Yeah.
Like when they say that, pretend you're going to the same class. Pretend you're, interested in the same things as them. And that's where I would say they take it a step further than Mormons ever do. Because I think if you point blank asked a Mormon, are you with a religious organization, and would you want me to join that organization? I don't think that they would lie to you.
I agree. But I think Mormons have a pretty strong honesty ethic.
Sure. Yeah.
That is perhaps more dominant in the way they operate than some of these other organizations.
We can say that their honesty ethic stops when they think they're going to hurt someone's feelings. Then their people-pleasing ethic takes over.
Okay, yeah, their niceness ethics that's the peak.
Yes.
Is be a nice person.
Oh man,
it's funny when you think about the spectrum that love bombing can take, because he told us about some women who were flirting with him, and you can have some other organizations. Children of God is probably one of the most remarkable organizations. It hits the news because they normalize sexual relations with children and have a whole doctrine that justifies it. But in addition to that, their doctrine for proselytizing under something called flirty fishing included taking their young women and having them go and do very much what he described, except they would actually have sex with vulnerable targets and kind of connect with people, get them roped into a relationship that they would then bring back to the group. And that's how someone would have an entry point into the group itself. So, there's a wide variety of ways that people use this false form of what's kind of like flattery and manipulative love and attention in order to ensnare somebody in a high demand group.
I think understanding how desperate we are for love, really paints how problematic and coercive love bombing really is. And when you think about there's so many studies that have been done about that group think mentality and the whole if your friends are jumping off a cliff, would you do it? And it's a lot of us would be like, totally no. But then they do these studies where it's I saw one recently where there's all these people sitting in a waiting room and this thing would beep and they would all stand up and then they'd all sit down. And of course, you've got the one person in there that doesn't know what's going on because everyone else is actors. And it would only take 3 beeps before she just started standing up. And not only that, but everyone else leaves. Another person who's not part of the study comes in. And because this one girl thought that she was supposed to stand up, they beep, then the new guy, and then it passed on. It was wild. And so just understanding that that wanting to belong and that psychological thinking that everyone around me knows what's going on, I just got to go with it, is such a powerful thing. And the scary thing is that a religion or an abusive relationship will come in and it will take that deep desire you have for wanting to be loved, wanting to be part of that group. And it will say, I can take this from you. I can take this from you in an instant if you don't do ABC, whatever. And so what that does to you psychologically then is not only is there all this pressure to kind of put any doubts aside, but there's also this pressure to give up maybe your own personal moral compass to really set aside what you think is right and wrong because you're so desperate to hang on to that love that you feel like you really need. And especially very vulnerable people who maybe don't have good family support outside of the group or whatever, they really feel like they need it.
Yeah,
so I guess it
occurs.
I'll go for it.
Go ahead, Jared.
No, you're good. Go.
Oh, I was going to say, it occurs to me that you're describing kind of 2 phases where love bombing plays a role. The first one is when you're outside of the group, you're unfamiliar with the group, but you're in a vulnerable state. And so love bombing is used as a positive enticement to get you to participate, to start to gain that sense of acceptance and belonging and, emotional nurture that comes from that. And once you get to the point where that is now your world of acceptance, then it becomes the thing that you want to hold on to. So the second phase of that is where it kind of becomes the glue that binds you to the group. And you mentioned that then becomes something that is your lifeblood that you now no longer want to lose. And that's where then the group starts to make higher demands of you. And in order for you to keep your standing and to keep that supply of emotional fulfillment and connectedness, you have to start doing the things that the group wants of you. And if you listen to some of Steve Hassan's more lengthy accounts of his experience in the group, while it was initially very enticing, eventually it put him in some very extreme and uncomfortable positions. But his desire to maintain that connection played a very strong role in him being resistant to anyone, even his family of origin, trying to reach out to him, to anyone trying to break him away from the group. So it can be a very powerful force once you're in it to keep you in it. Yeah. And that's an important thing. I think there's another dynamic to that, which is that if you do find yourself doubting, stepping away, being kind of on the precipice of not being in good standing, then they may double their efforts to show you that love and that overabundant affection to try to bring you back into the fold, to remind you what you would be missing. And so it's one of those ways where your own need for love can be weaponized to keep you in a prison you're trying to escape from.
Right. Yeah, I like that two-phase thing. You know, you've got the love bombing that gets you maybe into the church, but then you also have it as it could try to keep you in or try to reactivate you. There's kind of like different ways.
You have a
that
stimulus and I'm going to take it away. Okay. But so that's what I was kind of going to get at, is that I was trying to figure out, because my only experience with the phrase love bombing is like the ex-mormon subreddit. And that was anytime they told me that my bishop stops by and talks to me about guitar or the, Relief Society president comes by with a plate of brownies or whatever, that, they're love bombing you. They're trying to get you to join. I was like, I know they're trying to get me to come back. I don't care. But, so that was my only experience with it. So I was trying to ask myself, what could possibly, like, what about love bombing is wrong? And that would be the first thing, is in that Stephen Hassen video where he's, it would be the deception, like where they flat out lie to him, where they flat out lie and tell you that, I'm going to this class, or, I'm struggling with the same things as you are, where they instruct you to deceive. And I don't know that Mormons necessarily do that. I do know that they, I read that your blog post from like 6 years ago where you had that pamphlet. That pamphlet
from
was,
the 70s. I've got it linked below.
The pamphlet was great because, like, leave it to Mormonism to just bureaucratize anything. Like, it's like, hey, you want like all of the magic and spirit of friendship without, any of the magic and spirit? Like, here's your assigned friend. Like, we're going to turn friendship into a verb. And so that kind of ruins it. But it doesn't... To me, that the Mormon version of love bombing, it feels I would rather be the love bombed than the love bomber. Because, like, as the love bombed, I just get brownies and stuff. But the love bomber is, like, guilted into, like, friendships that he might not otherwise, that he might not otherwise get into. Anyway, so that's the first half. The half that I think is probably wrong with love bombing is the deception.
Deception, right.
The other half would be, you already kind of touched on it, basically the love, once you get what you want, once the bomber gets what he wants, he stops bombing. He's like, okay, well, I got what I wanted from you. I don't need to bomb you anymore. Or you can hold it over your head and say, well, I'll keep bombing you, but if you stop doing what I want, then no more bombing. And so I think those would be the two bad things. And I think that second one you can see a little bit in Mormonism. The problem is, what I kind of want to know is, so if like a Mormon comes to you and tries to befriend you and doesn't use deception, is, up front with you, and then you does not rescind that love after you join the church, because to me it sounds like like, oh, those Mormons are they're gonna befriend you until you join their church, and then they'll keep being your friend forever. Like they're gonna trick you into joining a community, and then you have a community from then on out. And like it doesn't sound like a terrible threat. So I want to know, like, would you think that there's something, I guess, harmful? I hate that word. Something not like manipulative about that, even if you take those two separate things away.
Well, I wrote about this some in the article, but what really gets at the heart of this is your observations at the beginning, Jared, were very good in terms of how do you distinguish authentic friendship from this love bombing thing? Where do you draw the line from it? Because if we do have something that we found brings us a lot of joy and we want to share that with other people, then it's a very natural impulse to reach out to people that mean something to you or that you may find that could benefit from it. And for me, I don't like it when the word authenticity gets thrown around a lot, because I think there's some games that get played with that. But in this context, being an authentic friend, meaning that you are actually genuinely reaching out to someone for the sole purpose of that friendship. And if it is something that you have in common with a person that you meet, if it's your neighbor, it may be simply the geographic place that you live that you have in common, which is then tied to the schools that you go to, the places that you shop and things like that. Or it may be through some mutual interest or something, but there's an authentic basis for that seed of friendship that could potentially grow, and you nurture it for the sake of the friendship itself, for the sake of the person involved in itself. And so there's no need for you to that pamphlet about friendshipping has it instructs the members to try to almost kind of sneakily learn what the people are interested in, report back to your church leader, and then they're going to design some activities that then you can go back and say, hey, the church is doing this and I know you're interested in it, so why don't you come? It's like a manipulative thing, because you're strategizing how to most effectively entice the person into something that has an ulterior motive. Whereas if you were allowed to be authentic, you just be their friend. And you don't do anything that is outside of what you would normally do to someone, that the end goal is simply to get to know them better and to share a little bit of your life with them in a way that friends mutually do. And I remember when I was at church, I had such a hard time with every member a missionary, because that's just another way of saying every one of your social, professional, educational connections are a potential point of contact that we can exploit for missionary purposes, and you are the missionary that's supposed to do it, and if you don't do it, then you should feel guilt about that. And I felt a great deal of guilt about that, because I really was uncomfortable with what I saw as kind of tainting what I wanted to be authentic friendships with this potential ulterior motive. And so I just didn't do it. And I felt terrible about it. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that sinking feeling of guilt when someone would get up and talk about every member a missionary. And I'm just like, I can't do it. And at one point, I just said, you know what? I'm going to accept my paradigm of missionary work is I'm just going to be as good a friend as possible to anyone that I encounter. And if at some point they want to know what's going on in my life and things that I have, then if they reach out to me, I will go with that flow and share it with them. And then it doesn't matter to me whether or not they join the church, because I'm a friend first. I'm not somebody trying to fish out an investigator. I'm a friend first, and I'll be a friend later because I didn't try to push something on them. They asked me. And so it would be just a natural part of our give and take of friendship. And
For sure.
for me, that was like the key thing.
I did notice that you mentioned that in the article, the whole, you just decided to choose the guilt instead.
Yeah.
And I think the only difference that I had was, like, I think I just didn't take it seriously. Because I think I had that sort of, I came to kind of the same conclusion as you, because I remember thinking that, well, if you like trick somebody into joining the church, they didn't, I don't know, this is the truth. We have the truth, it's a true gospel. So, like, I don't need to trick people to join it. I don't need to, like, pretend to be nicer than I am. I just present them with the truth if they seem to want it or whatever. And I can't fake that. Like, you can't fake a conversion. You totally can. But like the spirit of what is a conversion, you shouldn't be able to fake it. And so I think I sort of internalized that very early on. And I was just like, oh yeah, I don't like being a missionary is being the best Mormon that I can be. And then they will authentically, because there's that word, like, I don't think I didn't want people to join inauthentically. And so I think I just didn't take the every member missionary thing very seriously or something.
I'm very disappointed in you guys.
Yeah,
Because
Morgan was
I
a
was
hell
a
of a
really
missionary.
good member missionary, and I don't understand why you guys weren't pulling your weight.
I think you probably converted more people as like just a regular member than I
As
did
you
as a
did.
missionary.
It's true, I did.
I was a
So
god-awful missionary.
I want to bounce off of what Jonathan was saying, because I, unlike Jonathan, took the higher road and tried to convert all my friends. And
This little known fact is that Sister Jensen is based off Morgan when she was 16.
It's true. I had discussions with missionaries with my friends like a lot when I was in high school. Before I graduated, I gave all of my teachers a Book of Mormon with my testimony written in it. Like, I took it all very seriously. And looking back, the interesting thing that I know about it is that there was this pressure to like make my friends be the people I want them to be. And that is so incredibly unhealthy. Instead of learning like the healthier way, which is, find people that fill those needs, that you're looking for. I was trying to make people fill those needs, and Mormonism was just one of those ways that I would do that. And it sets a very unhealthy precedence in the relationship. And it also left me feeling very frustrated when people wouldn't want to join, and also frustrated too, because sometimes I did just want to be friends with this person and I didn't want to care about what they believed. But there was so much pressure from my family and from my church that was like, you need to be hanging out with people that have the same standards. Like, well, God, like, I'm in St. Louis. Like, most of my friends smoke weed every day. Like, how am I going to find the same standards unless they're Mormons? I got to make them Mormon,
It's funny how, that whole thing where we all had that impulse when we'd meet certain people where we'd be like, you would make a great Mormon. And we might say that because, we don't see them drop an F-bomb every other time, and they seem to prefer, something other than beer in their hand or something. But that's a huge loaded statement, because there's so much to being Mormon that they can't even know from the get-go. And it has to do with all sorts of things that they would have to accept about the nature of reality and God and the relationship and your whole soteriology and all that other crap. But
you look like you'd be really good at paying 10% of your income for the rest of your life.
You look rich.
The other thing, I think, when you do observe that it sort of cheapens your authentic connections with other people, it can be hard to like, how does that feel? What does that mean like? And so the story that I frequently bring up is the story of having a friend from a ward like 10 years prior give me a call. And he's like, hey, John, how's it going? Just wanted to catch up. And so we spend like 30 minutes talking about our kids, where we've been. And it's just like, I felt
then he
flattered.
Said get you in on the ground floor, right?
Right, exactly. Like there was this distinct shift in the conversation where then he started asking me about if are my finances taken care of. Well, it just like as soon as that happened, I just like, oh.
No,
and
I
it's like
I have a very strict like, you get 0 chances to be my friend with an MLM. So there's an example of where I find the whole love bombing thing annoying, because I've had quite a few people over the years reach out and be like, I've got a great opportunity after like reaching out, and it is exactly what you said. You're like, oh, this guy never really talked to me before. That's nice. Oh, fuck you.
I always feel like I have to preface, like if I'm reaching out to a friend from high school, because I like to do that occasionally, like catch up with people, and I always have to preface like, hey, I've been thinking about you, like, how's it going? How's life? How's your kids? And then I'm like, by the way, I'm not trying to sell you anything.
Which is exactly what like a Mary Kay consultant would say.
I know.
That's exactly what an MLM person would say.
I know. Well, they haven't said it to me yet, so I don't know. I guess I got.
I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to get you to be your own boss.
I'm like, no, I just love you. I'm sorry.
Well, see, that's the thing is that like these groups have ruined authentic connection for everyone, because now you always have that you know that you have to become a kind of a cynic about people being authentically friendly. It's like what you want to do. There's another dimension to this that occurs to me, and you know, when you're in the church, it will feel very familiar to you to have some stodgy guy in a suit come visit from out of town or from across town who is, you know, it can happen at the local level. It'll be the high priest, or not the what is the people at the stake level who sit in judgment. You'll have like High Councilman Sunday. There'll be like High Councilman Sunday where, you know, the guy from the stake comes and talks, and he'll say like, the stake president would like to extend his love for you. He loves you. And then you'll talk, you'll have like, you'll have the apostle come and visit the region, you know, and it could be anywhere around the world. If you see where Razban goes to Africa or Elder Stevenson goes to some other country, he'll say, I want to convey to you the love of the prophet. I was talking to him and I said, what would you like me to tell the people of Rwanda? And he just told them, tell them I love them. And so you hear this, and as a Mormon, you're just like, yes, I want to bask in the warmth of the prophet's love. And it's like, because this is somebody that you almost feel like you have a relationship with because you are listening to them every 6 months and frequently. And so there's a connection there. Then when you go and you listen to the Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing, you hear a Jehovah's Witness leader say, you know, the governing body loves you. And you're just like, that's so fake. It just like, they don't know you. You know, why do they have to? But the thing is, it's the same paradigm. And yeah. But what it does is it primes the audience to feel a form of connection that otherwise they wouldn't have. You know, if somebody comes to you and they started with, I love you, even though you're a nameless member of an audience that they probably can't even see, well, then surely someone who loves me is going to only say things or expect things of me that are for my own good. And it kind of puts you in that position to accept and internalize what they say. But it cheapens the notion of love. Almost like the best example I can give of it is there's this great movie, Idiocracy, that I'm sure you guys have seen. But, you know, they show how cheap this notion of love can be used when you just throw it around when they're walking into the Costco. And normally, you know, Costco or Walmart greeters, they're like, hey, how you doing? It's great to see you or something. Well, they walk into Costco and the guy's like, welcome to Costco. I love you. Welcome to Costco. I love you. And it's just like, it's just a blatant use of love to try to manipulate somebody to feel positive towards, in this case, a heartless corporation. Forgive me, Costco, for calling you a heartless corporation. I love you. I got this shirt from you. Anyway.
That's okay. Starbucks picks up the slack.
Okay.
Okay, so it's that I love that whole the whole notion with love of like, not only does it cheapen it, but also it will keep you in because you think like, oh, I don't like, you know, what this doctrine of the church. And you're like, no, I'm wrong. This is a place of love. Look how much love there is. Everyone's talking about love. It's such a loving place. And it's very it's very like, it's a way that you end up gaslighting yourself. Where you're just like, no, I'm crazy. This is love. This is all love. I love love. Who doesn't love love? Not Costco. They love love. Clearly.
Well, that's sort of where that's where the romantic relationship love bombing sort of comes into play. Is they talk about it as if it's like part of the abuse cycle, and so they can be shitty to you, shitty, and finally you're like, I'm done with this, and then all of a sudden, then comes the love bombing. It'll get you to question yourself and be like, hang on a sec. I kept telling myself this was so horrible. I had all these reasons that I thought it was horrible, and now I can't think of any because it's only love right now.
It's like they don't want you to notice that they upped the price of dog food at Costco, so they just got to shower on that love. Just kidding. Okay. So I want to bring this back to the whole reason I wanted to even that this video came to my mind was I got this really interesting comment on a video recently, and let me pull it up here. Okay, so I did this video with Originated, XJW, super awesome video. She talked a lot about love bombing within the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? And Sacramento Today commented, so there are those that would say that if a church is abundant in welcoming a new person and showing them love, that person would respond by saying, I know this is a false church because they're using love bombing, which is a cult tactic. Then there are other churches that are not abundant in welcoming new people and respond to new people with indifference. And then those that visit would say, I know this is a false church because Jesus taught, you know, his disciples by the love that they show, and his church didn't show me love, so they're not followers of Jesus. So here's the question. If welcoming a new person is wrong because that's love bombing and a cult tactic, and not welcoming a new person is wrong because that's not showing love to people as Jesus commanded them, then what is the correct way to treat new people who show up to a church? I love this question. This was the question that kind of inspired me to want to talk about this. And one thing I'll kind of add to that as we're discussing it is that the tricky thing with defining love bombing is that it's not a specific action. You can't say that bringing brownies to your neighbors is love bombing, but it can be. But it's not always. And so it's like, you know what I mean? There's a convoluted, you know, issue here. And Jared's already kind of touched on a little bit, but I want to dive in a little deeper, like love bombing versus friendliness. Where does the line get drawn? Mm-hmm. And like, if you're, you know, a happy Christian fellow and you want, you know, and you want to make people feel welcome, how can you do that without coming across as like, you know, really culty? I think it's very interesting to dive into.
I agree. So we've already talked about one dimension of it where there's deception involved. So I think it's possible to be welcoming in a good, healthy church without having to resort to deception. I think another dimension to it is proportionality. One of the things that is a tip-off that we all kind of have an internal gauge to is whether something is flattery or not. If somebody is just showering you with praise when you're like, I didn't really do anything to deserve this, but you're just like, oh, you're just amazing. You're just so amazing. The way that you know, your tenor voice and the hymn was amazing. I just kind of like, okay, just like back off a little bit. But that can be something where someone in a vulnerable state would be more willing to accept that. But that, I think this is more to the inauthenticity and flattery dimension of it. That can be a red flag that this is not authentic friendship or fellowshipping, but something that is beyond the pale. Do you see any other dimensions that can, I guess, a conditional nature of it? What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like if it's presented to you or even hinted to you that like, okay, this'll keep coming as long as you know, just pay 10% of your income and come to church. I don't know, spend like 8 hours of church every week or whatever. But I do think that, yeah, the disproportionality thing makes a lot of sense. And it is hard to tell because I think kind of the nature of religion, though, is to try to bring people to your religion. So it's sort of a different aspect of it than it is with the MLM thing. Because the second somebody tries to talk to me about an MLM, I'm just like, oh, piss off. Like, because you don't think that this is like the one true thing and gonna like change my eternity for the better or anything like that. You're trying to make money. And with religion, I at least have this sort of soft spot for if I think somebody just sincerely wants a good thing for me because they think that they have a good thing. We're like, oh, thanks. Hell no, but thank you. Thank you so much. And so I guess that kind of complicates it for me into being like, of course you want people to join your church.
Yeah. I want to say a couple of things in that comment. One thing that the guy or girl, I can't remember, commenting mentioned, welcoming them is considered love bombing. And here's the thing. I don't think it is. I don't think that, but like Jonathan said, it might be the proportion. Like if everyone's doing it, like, but if you have like people just come up and say, hey, you know, what's up? Good to see you. You know, let me know if you have any questions. Like, I don't think anyone's going to be like, love bombing, like back the fuck off. You know, I don't think people are going to respond that way. So I think that there's, like I said, I think that there's probably a happy medium somewhere. Right. And finding that happy medium. Yeah.
To the point that you've brought up a few times that as ex-Mormons, we may be quick to label something love bombing and miss opportunities for someone who is trying to authentically reach out and form a connection.
Yes.
And so it almost feels like once you step back, you get past your angry phase, you realize that there is a distinction between manipulative love bombing and authentic friendship. You just say, like for me, I start with the base assumption that when people reach out, they are trying to be authentic. And having been exposed to how love bombing looks in many different contexts, I'll wait for them to show me that what they're doing is love bombing rather than assume that that's the case. And I think that gives me a healthier foundation to have the opportunity to build friendships, because I don't think we're ever going to escape the fact that the American landscape is, filled with religious people, many of whom feel very positive about their religious traditions and the community and would love to bring somebody else to be into it. And so I'm okay with that as long as it stays within, good, healthy bounds and doesn't interfere with friendship in any way. And I think you'll get a sense of, after that first rejection, if they say, hey, would you like to come to church with us? And like Jared was saying, he's like, yeah, no, that's fine. You'll get a sense of whether or not they're going to be like, all right, well, he's an investigator that's a dead end. So now he doesn't call, he doesn't come over. He doesn't want to talk about the Yu-Gi-Oh game. I thought he really wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh. I spent 5 hours with him teaching him how to play Yu-Gi-Oh.
I built him a deck. I gave him my Blue Eyes White Dragon.
That sounds kind of like you win either way. It's like either way, like one way you find a guy to play Yu-Gi-Oh with you.
You have no idea.
The way you win is that you just tortured some asshole who was trying to manipulate you and lie to you. So like you win either way.
You win either way.
See, my brothers. My brothers don't know I'm love bombing them into the cult of Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm really trying to get them.
You're trying so hard. You're trying.
I converted one of them.
Brownies? Did you try brownies?
No, it doesn't work.
Okay, so Uber Mormon pointed out what I wanted to talk about next. It says it feels impossible to judge since we're not able to read the hearts of those around us. This is the dimension that I feel like we didn't bring up yet, which is intent, right? There can be a good intent behind what that person's doing. I say good, meaning like, genuine or sincere, or there can be the intent of like, I'm bringing them brownies because I hope that they come back to church. I have a neighbor that makes us treats once in a while, and I love those treats. Please keep doing it if you're watching this. Thank you. And I feel like she's being very sincere. She is Mormon. I don't feel like she's trying to convert me. I could be wrong, but I've chosen to just assume, like Jonathan, like you said, I've chosen to assume she's being sincere until she shows me otherwise. It's hard to get into that mentality. But I do think that they're like, I think the fear of like just assuming people are sincere, the fear is like, you're going to get hurt or, whatever. But if you can look past that and realize that you may miss out on good opportunities if you don't give people a chance, that there's something to be said about that as well. Like you said, misjudging someone's intent, assuming it's love bombing when maybe it's not.
I guess the only way to really know about the intent is like after the fact, basically. It's kind of like, it's that meme of the mom like playing with the girl in the pool while the other girl drowns, and it's the Mormon church holding up prospective members while new members drown, like if that is the way it is, then yeah, you could, as the prospective member, like, oh, you're just ignoring that other new guy that's like 2 steps beyond me, so I'm out.
Right.
Well, I think the church had to confront that reality because there was some statistic that was informing their policies a few years ago where people would join, get baptized, and then would just drop off the face of the earth. And so there was a new policy push for any new member has to immediately get a calling. And so that calling would keep them engaged in the church. And it's that engagement and that purpose that then drove them to participate in the community and stay.
They were more likely to, yeah.
Well, I remember looking at my area book when I went to this small town, like as far south as you can get in Brazil, and it was just a small branch of like 12, 13 people who would regularly attend, but it had like a full ward building. I was like, why the hell do we have a full ward building? And then I went to the area book, and there were like 850 members or something like that in this town, and so yeah, they can drop off pretty quickly, and that is one of the methods that Stephen Hassan mentions, is that they immediately called him to leadership within the Moonies. And he's like, oh, I've only been here a little bit. They must think I'm really special if they call me to leadership so quickly.
Right.
Now, the problem is with us, it was always, you want to be in the nursery? We're like, grrr!
They put us in the nursery every goddamn time.
I actually, when we moved to our last house, when Morgan was still, going and I was not, I went to the bishop ahead of time. I was like, hey, look, I know you're going to want to call us to something. I'm going to say no. That's fine. We can get along. My wife will say yes. Please don't call her to the nursery. Like, she's been in the nursery for like 3.5 years. She's tired of it.
It's like 3 wards in a row. It's like, if God is real, he just really wanted me to hate kids.
He's a nice bishop. He then didn't call her to the nursery.
No.
Were you guys like the youngest couple in the ward for all those different wards?
It's because we were a young married couple, but we didn't okay, this is so weird to explain. But in BYU, Idaho, there's like, you have 2 different wards you can attend when you're single, which is like a family ward where like most Mormon families will go to, and you can go to a singles ward, which is what you would go to as a young single adult. And then they had this weird third option, which was a young married ward, because BYU Idaho is just like a really weird place. And we always went to the family wards because they just happened to be at the time we preferred. We just picked which ward to go to based on what time we wanted
Cafeteria
to go.
Mormons, if you will.
And anyway, so they're young. They don't have any kids yet. They can just deal with our kids. I don't know. Maybe it was God. I don't know. I'll never know.
Well, it's you guys are still young and you haven't yet grown to hate kids, whereas the older parents are just like, oh, it's my 8th kid. I'm sick of them.
No, but but I can hate other people's kids just fine.
I thought it was like them trying to convince us to have kids, and totally had the reverse effect. We were like these kids are the worst.
Yeah, it did, because like my kid could shit on my face, and as I spit his shit out, I will laugh and be like, "Oh, you rascal!" But like if that kid like tried to open the door a couple of times, I'd be like, "Oh my god, oh my god!"
There was always like that like troublemaker kid. I don't remember what his name was.
Liam. It was always Liam.
I was gonna say it was a Mormon name. I was like, it was Nephi or something.
It was 100% of the asshole kids in nursery are named Liam.
God, I swear it happened twice in a row. Anyway, tangent. So love bombing. I think one thing.
I think.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
So there's another dimension to this where if one of the great sins of love bombing is that you're engaging a relationship with ulterior motives, I think as ex-Mormons we need to introspect on that a little bit, because I think I've been guilty of this as well, where some of my engagements with my family are driven from this need. Like I need my brothers to understand why I am where I am. I need them, I need to talk to them about this stuff. And there was a period of time where that was kind of a primary motivation for any time I talked to my brother, and the conversation would just go to some church topic. And so that kind of, I think it just as in the context of love bombing, it taints relationships and it makes them more complicated and less authentic. I think it can do that on the side of the ex-Mormon people if we allow ourselves to stay in that mode and lean into that rather than staying, wait a second, you know, it's just as unethical as the other thing. If I'm only going to engage my family and try to shift the topic to this thing when they've already said they don't want to go to it, and it's really hard to resist just because you have that same, you know, anti-missionary zeal that the missionaries may have, and it's humbling to confront that about, you know, my own self in how I've done it. But as I've backed away from being in that mode, I've found that I've had a much better, easier relationship with my family, and they probably don't have to roll their eyes as much whenever a church topic comes up. I'm not saying I don't ever do it anymore. I mean, it still happens, but
that's why I never really feel bad. Like there's the whole adage that if you like, can't you just leave the church and leave it alone? I'm like, well, I mean, I can, but that's because I was a terrible missionary. I was really bad at being Mormon. But the problem is, like, come on, you kind of made your bed, Mormon church. Like, you created an army of proselytizing missionaries, and you told them all, like, this is important. Convince everybody that you're right, and then they did it. And then when they decided this isn't for me anymore, they didn't all of a sudden just like get rid of that and say, yeah, and I'm also done with the whole convincing everyone I'm right thing.
Well, and I like too what Johnson's pointing out, because it is this, like, it's very innate in us to want to prove ourselves, right? And we want people to not misjudge us, right? Because we just don't want them to judge us in general. So we got to like make it really clear why we left. And that impulse is coming from a place of insecurity, right? Because we're relying too much on other people's perceptions of us to make us feel like we're okay in doing what we're doing. But I think the more you can approach a relationship from the viewpoint of like what natural things do we have in common, you know, that I can appreciate, like what naturally, like where's the natural overlap? And if you can find that natural overlap, I think you're going to feel like you can enjoy those relationships a lot more. Or you may find that there's not natural overlap and maybe you need to find better friends.
I'll tell my brothers, I'm done with you. I'm looking for better friends.
It was nice knowing you, brothers.
You broke my heart.
But you can call me when you decide to get your own Yu-Gi-Oh deck.
No, I'm not letting go of the proselytizing on that.
Dude, I was a Yu-Gi-Oh kid. I get it. I used to get up early for Saturday morning cartoons, and I would try to get in front of, like, get the spot closest to TV so I could watch Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon.
I like Yu-Gi-Oh
whippersnapper.
Oh man.
You guys are just young little whippersnappers. I hated the game. My kids are like, I want to watch this cartoon, Dad. I'm like, oh, they just make up those stupid rules. It's so obnoxious. And then, I want my own deck, Dad. Okay, fine. If we're going to get the deck, you're going to learn to play it and you're going to learn the rules. And then I learned that it's like this amazing game where there's a set number of rules. And then the whole point of the game is to break the rules in specific ways. And it's just, I was hooked. And my kids are, for a while, they're just like, they're sick of it. I'm like, I'm going to be in the nursing home and y'all better come and visit me and do anyway, okay, so
I will say the only thing I know about Yu-Gi-Oh is in the American edit they took out all of the guns, and so there's this wonderful scene in the American edit where these guys pull out literal finger guns and try to shoot at Joey, and he dodges nothing a bunch of times.
And we still have school shootings.
That didn't fix it, huh?
Did not fix it. It did not, unfortunately. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, so you mentioned that there was on this love bombing thing, being able to tell the difference between real relationships and fake relationships. How do we engage our families? Like, what do you do when you're confronted with something that's obviously love bombing and you want to save the relationship? Like, I don't know, that MLM thing.
Oh, just
I
be
just was
completely
like,
honest.
yeah, I'm done. But like,
So
if you want to save the relationship, how do you back somebody down from that mode?
I guess it would be like a boundary setting thing of like, hey, I care about this relationship and I'm not okay with ABC thing, which is like I'm not okay with you trying to sell to me or whatever. I liked in your article the way you put it of like I don't mix business with friends. Like I felt like that was like a really kind way of setting a boundary. Maybe too kind.
So I've got like I always phrase it this way. I've got like 4 friends, and I'm not really taking applications. So if one of those friends tries to send me like an MLM, like then I'm gonna have a real issue. I'm gonna have to confront it. But the only people who have tried to get me on the MLMs have been people that they're acquaintances, and I like them, all right. But I'm like, yeah, I don't need to talk to you anymore. I suppose if somebody is love bombing you, I think the best policy is just be completely honest with them. I don't know. Morgan's talked a lot about honesty on her channel for the last year or so.
I kind of have a thing for that.
Yeah, and like sometimes truth is painful, and I think this is where you really have to break your Mormon chains, because we already touched on it, that sort of their peak value is being nice, and that takes precedence over honesty even. And that's where we get that phrase, the worst thing anybody ever taught us. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Like, no, if you don't have anything true to say, don't say anything at all. If it can be true and nice, then let it be that. But if it can either be true or nice, then choose true every single time. And so if what you have to say is like, look, man, I got to be honest with you. I think you're trying to love me into coming back to church, and I'm just never going to do that. You keep hoping that I will come back to church, and I'm fine with you hoping that, but I never will, probably, And so, and I think people more often than not find that refreshing. Morgan is one of the most honest people I know in that way, and not like, too often you hear the phrase brutally honest, and they emphasize brutality and not honesty. It's just an excuse to be brutal. Honesty is just their excuse for brutality. But I've seen Morgan have these conversations with people where she's been more honest than I would want to be. That makes me squirm inside. And the people
very uncomfortable.
Yes. That's a niceness thing. And I know I don't seem like a nice person online, but
he's a very agreeable person.
But there's a lot of people who will, like a lot of friends who will be like, you know what? I like how honest you are, because they know you're not trying to be a dick. You can be honest with people in a way that's like, I want the best for you. I'm going to tell you the absolute truth. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it'll also be nice.
Well, and not to under or overstate, I can't figure out the transition there, but I've lost friendships over it. I have. I've lost friendships from my honesty, but I think what I've gained was a sense of like confidence and trust in myself more. And I think that is more important to me. Yeah, I read Radical Honesty like a year ago and just like, I was like, all right, lying's gone out the window. Anyway, it's kind of random. The missionaries did show up actually just a couple weeks ago. And this is a good example of like, they just showed up and I didn't even look through the peephole. I was not prepared. And I just opened the door and it's the missionaries. And I was a little bit nervous because I didn't really know what to say, because they've actually never come to get us yet, which is weird because we've been out a while and we've lived in a couple places. Anyway, I was just like, they were like, can we share a message? And I was just like, no. I was like, I grew up Mormon. It's not for me, but I have so much respect for what you guys are doing. And, thanks for dropping by, And in my mind, I think as an ex-Mormon, as like a more fresh ex-Mormon, I would have had a really hard time with that interaction. I would have wanted to make excuses. I would have wanted to be angry, like they're coming over here and trying to judge me. And, and it's like, ultimately it was cool to feel like a lot of the biases were gone. And I could just be like, they're trying to do something that they think is nice and helpful, and I can just view it that way and also like politely decline, if that makes sense.
See, I'd have been an ass at that point. Like, let me tell you about your prophet and his 14-year-old wife.
Let me tell you something, Sonny. How about you?
You wouldn't have been like, hey, I got an Xbox. And you can set up some appointments
Well, that's now.
and
That's
come and
not
play
like-
Xbox. And I'll get the pizza. You guys just chill. I mean, we can't even entice them with like calling home anymore because they can call home now every week.
know.
But
No, that's more now. Like now, if they well, actually, I'd probably just be like, go away. I don't want to talk to people right now. But like, generally speaking, if
Jared
like,
would
I-
just look through the people and be like, nope, and not answer.
if you guys,
I'm waiting for them to come because I hate it that we have like lady missionaries because I know they'll never do it. But I was like, I got some yard work. And I know these missionaries love it. Like, I will stuff your face with pizza and Diet Coke. I just need some yard work done. And
You're like,
they say they love to do it, but they won't let the lady missionaries do that. So
oh, I much prefer that to
is
teaching
Yu-Gi-Oh!
people.
Is playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Considered a service project? I just want to know.
I'll listen to it. I'll
Technically, it's the
listen.
rules. Actually, it's the only time in my life I've ever played Yu-Gi-Oh! Was on my mission.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, Jonathan. Anyway, all right, we're really getting off to the weeds here. Any other closing thoughts about love bombing? This conversation has been so awesome.
I think the inauthenticity that it flavors your friendship with bleeds over into like everything. And when I say that, what I mean is like one of the last lessons that I ever attended as a member of the church was a lesson where the whole point of it was when you go out in public, you need to have a smile on your face and you need to project happiness because people are going to judge the church by your countenance. Because the church it's a program to bring happiness to your life. And so that needs to be evident to people who see you. And it places this tension between the reality of people's lives that include ups and downs, that include sadness and boredom and stress and all these other things, and the expectation that you project some sort of fake facade for the purpose of enticing people to the church. And so then you yourself become inauthentic in your life in public because you always have this in the back of your mind.
Because they're telling you.
And yeah, because you're telling to. And so if you're in a friendship and you're friendshipping someone, well, then you've got to do that in the context of the friendship. You have to always be happy. Your house needs to be in good condition. You have to always project something because, of course, the church is making your life fantastic, and that's why you're going to sell it. And it adds another layer of fakeness to what could be an authentic relationship. I mean, how much closer do you bond with a real friend if they see you at your low times and they have an opportunity to extend a hand to you, to help you, and for you to then feel that way, that you've got that closeness with them. Never mind, you being able to do that to them. And so that a real authentic friendship that includes that type of mutual humanity that brings people together, including the highs and the lows, gets lost when we have this fake plaster of happiness that we put over everything. Some people have talked about toxic positivity, and this may be a little bit of what they're alluding to, but it's a thread that is related to love bombing, but it also kind of just colors your whole existence in the church. I don't know if you guys encounter that as well in your own experience.
I do want to answer that, but this comment made me laugh. Tell me more about this Yu-Gi-Oh! And pizza night. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the topic of the day. Last week it was windshields. Today it's Yu-Gi-Oh! I did get a lot of that pressure. I remember anytime we'd go out as like a word group or whatever, it would be like, remember, you are representing the church. Like, don't fuck around. Like, keep your shit together, you young little hooligans, And it was also like this notion of like, if I'm like super happy and like I portray this, like I'm so happy and my life is so awesome. If I portray that, then one day some lucky bastard's going to be like, Morgan, why are you so goddamn happy all the time? And I'm going to be like, here we go. Like,
first of all,
Golden contact.
First of all, I'm gosh darn happy, okay? I'm happy as heck. And it's because of a little guy named Jesus. No, so I
Praise
think
Jesus.
I think so. I think there's this type of person who like. So I didn't feel pressured to be the every member a missionary in the way that like Morgan did. Like I didn't try to convert people or anything like that. But what I did do was that, you know, pretend you're always doing well. You know, pretend you're happier than everybody around you because you're Mormon. So I think there's that type of person that might try to be the missionary and under duress, you know, who's like not happy about it, but like desperately trying to please the powers that be. And that person might have a potential to have a legitimate friendship with you, but maybe they feel pressured into trying the inauthentic friendshipping or whatever. And I think that there's them, and then there's the ones that are completely unauthentic. So, and I think the ones that are completely unauthentic, if you try that just complete and total honesty, they'll be like, "Ew, that's weird," because it makes people feel weird, and then they'll run off. But the guy that's like scared, the guy that's kind of like timid and like, I'm doing this because I have to, I would love to have a real connection with somebody if I could, but I just got to push my church on
gives
people.
him permission.
Yeah, it's that that just straight up honesty can be disarming.
Right. Yeah, and I that's interesting because okay, if it's like, I do think that if you can be honest with people, sometimes it can set them free if they're in the right place for it. Because then all of a sudden they feel like, and I've noticed this recently because honesty's kind of like been a big deal for me because I was very people pleaser. It's been a big struggle for me my whole life because I feel like I had a parent that was had a lot of narcissistic tendencies, which left me feeling like I could never be honest. So honesty has been a big journey for me. And what I've noticed is that for a lot of times I'm finding people that that appreciate my honesty, that they see it as a breath of fresh air, and that it frees them up to feel like they can be honest and they can let their guard down and be safe in my presence. And that's pretty cool. And since we're on that tangent.
Yeah. Should we?
No, I think it's a great point because it's when it's kind of like, oh, we can be real. Like we don't have to be perfect. Okay, like that those come sit next to me. Like I want somebody like that in my life. And when you are living where, you know, everybody's house looks like a magazine, you know, showcase of the parade of homes, and everybody's got the perfect family and all the kids are well behaved, and you're just like, I'm struggling, and you know,
the Christmas statue on top of a piano.
Yeah, it's like I need someone who's got some dents and some reality in your life, and that can definitely be a way to connect and really find real friendships. And I feel like I've had an easier time doing that outside of the culture of the church, but I don't want to pretend like that impulse is unique to Mormonism. I think that there's still some human elements that you'll find that almost in any context. But certainly the culture of the church kind of ramps it up to 11 a little bit.
Oh
sure.
my, definitely. You know, one example like that comes to my mind is whenever, and this, I think this is a female thing. You guys can tell me, but I'll go to like a girlfriend's house.
Right?
Bitches be crazy. I go to like a girlfriend's house and they'll immediately do that thing where they're like, I'm so sorry, everything's a fucking mess. Like, just ignore the mess. Like, that makes such a big fuss of it.
And it's like one onesie
There's
sitting on the
like-
couch
yes.
or something like that. Like, I am so filthy and disgusting. I'm sorry.
And that drives me absolutely insane. I never, I used to do it though. I used to do that because there was almost this social like thing. Like you're supposed to shit on yourself, and the person who shows up is supposed to be like, no, you're great, even though your house is disgusting. And like, what's funny to me about it is I realize like in part why it bothers me so much is because when I show up to someone's house and they're like, oh my gosh, please ignore the mess, what they're doing is they're assuming right off the bat that I give a shit about that. Like that I'm that kind of friend that's just going to come over and judge them for a messy house. And I find that offensive. Like I'm not that kind of person.
I think they're just setting a standard that doesn't exist by saying like, this is what I consider to be filthy and disgusting.
Yeah, that too.
This is me on my off day.
It could go either way. I've seen it go both ways. Because I've seen it where like their house is a little bit cluttered or whatever. And I always, when people come to my house, I'm like, welcome. Take it how it is, because this is what it is.
Don't assume the stains are chocolate. I hear you on that. I don't know. I feel like there are social dances that we play, and
the dance.
I understand
at the end of dinner.
I'll pay.
I sound like a callous asshole whenever I go to dinner with friends now, because it'll be like, is there separate checks? Like, yes. Duh.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. See, I mean, because it could be that they're assuming that you're going to judge them, or it could be like a transaction where they give you an opportunity to forgive them and help them feel accepted for who they are and all their imperfections, and then that becomes a bonding thing that you guys have, and they'll reciprocate, and I don't know. It's to some extent, these little social dances that we do, when you step back and look at them, they're a source of familiarity and comfort almost, but they're humorous when you step back and say, like, look what we're doing,
Yes.
Like, just a self-deprecation competition. It's like, oh, my house is filthy. It's like, oh no, mine is disgusting. It's like, no, you don't understand. Mine's gross. There's like shit on the wall. No, mine, I should kill myself. My house is so gross. No, girl, you're perfect in every way.
Don't change a thing.
And this is how Morgan stays married to Jared.
This is devolved. It's some very very interesting insight, right, into our dynamic.
No, I married up.
Oh my god. Okay, before we end, I have another clip I need to play, and this is more for funny.
This is what I thought of when I was trying to figure out in my own mind what love bombing was. I thought of this video. So this is...
I'm glad that you took the credit so that I didn't accidentally take the credit from you.
I was explaining because it might not fit that well.
No, I think it's perfect. Well, we'll decide. Does it have the proportion, deception, intent? Yeah, we'll find out. We're huge Office fans, and this scene is Dwight just basically buying everyone bagels so that they will owe him a favor. And the rest of the episode's hilarious if you check it out, because then him and Andy start trying to one-up each other in favors. Because then Andy's like, oh, you did such a nice thing for me. I'm going to like polish your briefcase. And then he's like, damn it, like I want a favor from Andy, like a specific favor. So then they like are going at it, trying to give each other favors. It's hilarious.
It's kind of because Andy's the only character dumb enough to take that seriously.
Yes, like he's like wanting to be nice, like, and
he's the only person petty and dumb enough, like as dumb as Dwight.
Anyway, I just thought it was funny. Jared brought this up as like an example of love bombing, and I don't know that it quite fits that.
Well, he got it's the intentionality thing. He got the bagels not even for a second thinking, I want to do a nice thing for the people around.
It was can a guy just get some bagels so that they can all give him a favor?
I guess that's more quid pro quo. But,
more so, but it was still like fell on point.
Well, I mean, is there an element of, because it's what he's doing is he's doing the obligation thing, kind of like in the Big Bang Theory where someone gives Sheldon a gift and he's like, you haven't given me a gift, you've given me an obligation because now I have to reciprocate. And I don't know if, I mean, there may be an element of that. You always think of the church talks a lot about the charity and welfare work that it does. And part of that includes the Bishop's Storehouse. And so I don't know if you guys have it, we've encountered before where people who are not affiliated with the church, but have heard that the church has a bishop storehouse for people who are in need, and they'll just come in and they'll be like, you guys, I need some help. Give me some help. I'm not going to join the church, but I need some help. And I was in a inner city ward in Boston when I was in residency, and that was one of the things that happened. But the bishop handled it okay, I guess. I don't know, but the bishop did not give them help. They said, well, if you'd like to come and get to know us a little bit more and let us get to know you a little bit more, and we're here to help, but it's a process. And then the person didn't want to follow through on that. But that's where, is there an obligation element to the way that the church extends its help or extends its love? If, I think you hear occasionally in the ex-Mormon community, people wrestling with this, where if they've left the church, particularly women who get divorced as part of their faith transition, and they find themselves without an education, without employment prospects, and in a hard way, but they've left the church, and they know that the church has resources to help people, and they feel conflicted over going back to the bishop and asking for help when it was the church itself that started the thing that blew their life up in the first place, and their attitude towards the church. It's a tough thing to grapple with. And to the credit of the stories that I've heard, I feel like bishops in that position generally tend to act on the side of compassion and help. But I know your mileage may vary according to the bishop.
Yeah.
No, we did have a
roulette.
bishop in Brazil that, like, we had an investigator who he didn't seem all that interested, but at one point he needed to like spend all of his money on his mom for a surgery or something. So the bishop gave us like $50 to go buy him groceries or something like that. That was pretty cool. And he never joined. Bishop was just a nice guy.
Yeah. I think the church is full of stories like that. And so I always feel bad painting them as complete, heartless people who are only interested in you joining the church, and you'll never get a dime from them otherwise. Uber Mormon put a comment up there that said, ironically, performing happiness makes you less happy. And I think this is an interesting thing to delve into, because there is some research that would actually support the idea that to some extent, not so much like fake smile. Well, actually, the specific study was like, if you smile, people that were forced to smile for a period of time ended up improving their mental health or something like that. It was like, but there are aspects, I think, of your outlook that if you are advised to, for example, look for something positive in any situation, then if you do that authentically and you're looking for the positive in your own life in any particular situation, that can shape your mindset. That can actually be a positive, helpful thing for you, because you do have maybe more than we anticipate power to change your mental health, your mental state through doing things like that. And part of that is, cognitive behavioral therapy is aimed at undoing some of the unhelpful thought processes that tend to focus on negative through catastrophizing, through black and white thinking, through splitting. All those things allow you to focus more on the negative, and realizing that those are mental processes that you go down, and then choosing and learning to override those with more positive or solution-based or less black and white-based thinking can have an effect that helps you over the long term. And so there is an element of Mormon happiness that may not actually be fake. It may actually be because some of the processes that Mormons have, whether it's that they find hope and they find agency, which means that they have a sense that they can alter their course because of, things that David Bednar teaches. Even though he roots it in his priesthood authority, the net effect of what he's trying to get people to do can actually have a positive mental effect in their individual life. It's kind of a Dumbo's feather effect.
Wow.
And so
that's
something that, I think once I got over my angry phase and I started to pay attention to a little bit more of this stuff, you can understand, like, Mormons are complex creatures, and they've achieved a great deal of success, both as a church as well as in individuals' lives. There's a lot of professional, functional people who do have large families that somehow replicate to the next generation. There's something successful about that. And it's certainly has its shadows and its dark corners that, we've lived through and we experience, but that doesn't mean that the entire situation is all unhealthy. So wrestling with that, I think, is a big part of, my journey presently.
Yeah, well, and I think, again, like coming full circle to like what I talked about earlier about like remembering that the person doing the love bombing, it might be in their mind very sincere in their love bombing of you. And that's something that you have to take into account, because I think if you can approach the situation with more compassion, you can be kinder, first of all, and you can maybe even potentially still have like good relationships with these people that you might not have otherwise because of assuming malintent. Like we assume, oh, they're love bombing. It's almost like it's this malicious thing to keep me going to church. And it's like, I mean, I don't know, like in my brain, I almost like want to reverse engineer it, because it's like we sit here and we're like, you got high demand religions, right? And you got like, it's a tactic they use is love bombing. But I don't think that it's like that. It's like, it's more like there's these sincere members that really believe it. And they know that being nice to you will share their awesome happiness with you. And it's like, I think not in every group, but I definitely think more so in Mormons, it really is this like, they think that they're being sincere, even if they do have the intent that they want you to come to church. It's like a sincere intent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem, I guess, then comes, we talked about before, that can be a very ends justify the means type thing.
Right.
And
right.
somebody can sincerely believe that the ends of getting you to join the true gospel justify the means of lying to you about, oh, hey, I'm into Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, poor Jonathan. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning to just remember that, so that you maybe don't hurl unnecessary resentment or abuse at these, at these members of these groups.
Well,
Yeah, and don't throw away opportunities. Don't throw away opportunities to actually find a friend if you're approached by someone like that. And maybe even though the monkey went to the not to the wire cage, but to the one that had a soft towel around it, that's still not a real monkey. But the monkey found comfort in it. And we're dealing with real humans there. And I think you can still find, in the case of Mormons, because we have some sense of what it means to be a Mormon when we're here. I wouldn't feel as safe saying this about Jehovah's Witnesses or Scientology, because I'm unfamiliar with how deeply entrenched they are or how separate their lives may be from reality. But for Mormons, having been one, I know that there is there's a real person under there that I have a sense of the type of influence the church can have on there. So I feel a little bit more comfortable being involved in trying to form real connections with those people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it does feel like the more intense the high demand group gets, the more coercive and intense like those tactics.
Well, I would say that like with, I mentioned those two things that I think are probably wrong with love bombing. There's the deceit, but then there's also the implicit or explicit promise, threat that this will go away if you stop doing what I want you to do. And I'd say with Jehovah's Witnesses, they have, it's explicitly stated that the love will stop if you go away. Like they're supposed to shun you.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I would think over time they would start to realize that doesn't work. But Jehovah's Witnesses, very recently, they're doubling down on their theology of shunning, And the reason why, like,
we're
they had
losing
new
members.
light-
Maybe if we're meaner.
Seriously, they think like too many members are leaving. Instead of being like, hey, you know what? Let's like open the door. Like, let's, keep connections with families. But instead what's happening, they're doubling down. So it used to be that like, you would be resurrected still, like if you had joined, but you fell away or whatever. And now it's like, nope, you're not going to be resurrected. You're just, Jesus going to zap you at the next
shit.
coming.
You're
and
not
you're
even
just
like
gone.
grandfathered in if you died before that was changed.
Before it was changed. That's like a whole other interesting rabbit hole. I've been learning a lot more about Jehovah's Witnesses recently. It's very fascinating. And definitely like it's just so different than Mormonism because of the extent of the shunning that happens when you leave.
No, actually, that's a really important observation that it was kind of the impetus behind the Is It Culty series that I've done, where I'm trying to talk to people from different backgrounds. Is when you study these other groups, you realize that while you can call Mormonism as a cult, you have to understand how soft it is in relative to how hard how extreme some of these other ones are. And, there's the degree to which a virus will allow its host to live and continue to manufacture the virus gives you a sense of how functional a virus is. Whereas if it kills it right away, it maybe won't replicate as much. Well, there's some element of that evolutionary principle in how these groups are. And Mormonism, for all of its faults, has a level of functionality in both its ability to propagate generation to generation, as well as its ability to provide a sense of stability and prosperity within an individual's life that explains why it's full of a bunch of successful professionals and all these other things, even though it does have its dark underbelly. So.
Sorry, we're just laughing at the user I had to block.
The adult chat. I get that all the time too.
Sorry, guys, that was meant to go on our OnlyFans. That wasn't meant for this channel.
Morgan, there was hot singles in our area, and you just blocked them.
I was gonna say, I totally agree with Jonathan. I don't even really like referring to Mormonism as a cult. I usually am very careful about the way I use that term, because when you look at Jehovah's Witnesses, or I've been studying a lot about La Luz del Mundo and just these other groups, all of a sudden you feel like, wow, like you said, Mormons are integrating into society a lot better than a lot of these other groups. And it is interesting. And I think that that's probably why Mormons maybe would retain more membership than some of those other groups. There's got to be a cutoff though, because like, okay, you get the Jehovah's Witnesses, like there's more at risk in leaving. But then you get the Mormons and there's less at risk in joining. Anyway, long tangent. Anyway. Okay. Closing thoughts again, because I probably should wrap this up, but I'm having so much fun that I keep not wanting to end it. Now that I know that there's singles in the area, I gotta go.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I always love talking about this kind of stuff. And I've enjoyed seeing you and Jared and the rapport that you guys have. And in particular, you covering some other groups, I think is really fascinating, because especially some of these groups that we don't hear as much about. Everybody's heard about Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses, but the Mundo group, there's some really fascinating things coming out of that. So I'm glad you're here doing that sort of work. And you were gone for a while, but I'm glad to see you back.
Dude, thank you, Jonathan. I was full disclosure, I was so excited to have you on the channel and slightly nervous.
Oh, no reason to be at all.
And I think more nervous because I'm like doing lives takes it up a notch, right? Can't like cut out if I say something stupid. I could cut out all your smart stuff and leave all my smart stuff in and be like, wow, like I'm smarter than Jonathan Streeter.
No, but we're missing your fun edits. I love it when you did the little zoom in and the slow down to accentuate things. I'm so jealous of your editing skills.
Anyway, thank you so much for being here. You guys can check out Jonathan. There's a link to his channel below. He's got awesome, awesome stuff. And maybe he will grace us with his presence again one day. And Jared, thanks for marrying me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you guys so
right.
I'm gonna end the video. You say it's been all right.
Yeah, we had a good run.
Oh my God.
He adores you. And when I talk to him offline, he's got nothing bad to say about you. He's lucky to have you.
That's it. That's good.
All right.
Just kidding. Okay, thank you
Bye,
guys
everyone.
for watching. We'll see you guys.
See you, John.
Bye.